Rogers TV, the voice of college football on a Wednesday night, and it's always big, it's always huge, and it's even better when we got these two on board. Jason Parker from Chop Chat, and we've got Logan Robinson from Noel Game Day to get us started. This is the kickoff of our big Wednesday night, 3 hours of live streaming. We start with Florida State football. Boys, how you doing tonight?
Doing good. Logan, you got your computer back. Mazel tov to you, man.
Yeah, well, I had to buy another one, so it's been pretty tough. Obviously, I've lost my headphones too, so I look like I'm about to play Call of Duty, which I'll probably be doing after this. But yeah, I finally got a laptop. I can actually do schoolwork, and I don't have to be so stressed anymore.
So all your Twitter accounts about, I need a break from studying. That's tonight. That's what we're doing here.
Yeah, but everything, just took my exam earlier. We're good to go. I'm full blast, full energy.
What was the
now.
exam on?
The exam was on drones. I'm taking a UAS course, and it was our first exam of the year, of the semester, and I enjoyed it. I think I did pretty decent, and I'm hoping for at least a B. If not, I'll be pissed. Drones. It's a drone class. I know. This is what I'm paying for, is a drone class, and it's a part of. I get credit for it too. It's not even a extra fun course.
This is my alma mater. Is teaching a course about drones.
I don't recall any drone classes being offered while I was in school. I think I missed them by maybe a year or two.
Yeah, maybe so.
I took a geography.
Logan and I separated just by a few years.
I took a geography class where our textbook was a coloring book for my geography class my senior year. So I really can't talk about the academic prowess of Florida State University at this moment. So let's focus on good things. Florida State football has a winning record.
Yeah. It does have a winning record, and it's coming off its best performance. I would say you guys are going to be able to fill me in and give me a little bit better perspective than everybody else out there, but certainly based on all the metrics, Florida State 31, North Carolina State 13, and the Noles as a 6.5-point under favorite, certainly cleared the spread by a whole bunch and played extremely well, taking a 17-6 lead to the locker room and holding on and playing a nifty second half after a strong first half. They put two halves together, Jason, to win 31-13.
It only took 5 games for them to be able to hold a halftime lead. I'm so proud of the guys out there. It's funny, we talked about this before we went live on here, was the general consensus, I think, from many people inside Doak Campbell Stadium, myself included, members of my family and friends, was, can we play this game? Can we play that Virginia game all over again? Can we play that Boise State game all over again? That was the most complete game I think you've seen from Florida State since Willie Taggart took over. And you could even argue since the last season of Jimbo Fisher. I think you saw the offense when Alex Hornibrook, when he wasn't getting sacked, and he was sacked 8 times, so it wasn't all great. We can talk about that as the hour goes along. But Alex Hornibrook came in for James Blackman. It was a little surprising because James Blackman was announced as the starter when the lineups were announced about half an hour before the game, but then Alex Hornibrook took the first stats. But 300 plus yards from him, 3 touchdowns. But to me, the impressive thing was the defense. Statistically, they gave up just over 400 yards in the game, but 80 of those came on the final drive. You give me a defense that gives up around 300 yards a game, I like FSU's chances of winning. Take it with a grain of salt is NC State. They have struggled over the last couple games, but to me, this is the momentum. This is the way FSU needs to be playing, and it's all because of the power of the Popeyes chicken. Yeah, Kyle Pickett, I see what you wrote there.
Yeah, before we get the take from Logan, I would like to highlight the comment made there by Kyle, because Kyle is responsible for our first 4 comments of the night, including the always popular Mark Rogers for VP 2020. But this one in particular that Jason refers to is taking a shot at his beloved Popeye chicken.
How is he finally trying to
get a sponsorship?
Yeah.
Jason loves to talk over me. You notice that, Logan? We got 55 minutes, Jason.
Okay, well, because the sandwich isn't out yet.
I know you just can't help yourself, and this is your topic. I know this is your topic.
This is his.
The Popeye sandwich.
Until we get a sponsor, Kyle, I will certainly put up the comment there that Popeyes does suck. If it in fact does suck, that's Kyle's opinion. But as soon as we get a sponsorship from either Chick-fil-A, Churches, or Popeyes, then I will have to refrain from displaying such comments. Jason.
Popeye's number 1. All right. First of all, how can he try it when the sandwich hasn't even come out yet? It was supposed to come out at the end of last month. Popeye's sandwich, top Chick-fil-A, in the same way that Florida State dominated NC State. NC State was the Chick-fil-A, Florida State was the Popeyes, and you saw what happened when they go head-to-head. Domination.
Before we hear from Logan on Florida State 31, North Carolina State 13, my thoughts on paying collegiate players. First of all, the legislation passed in California and soon to be passed in other states doesn't necessarily pay the players. I believe that the players are paid with the scholarship. I do not want them to be paid anything past meal money and basic maintenance past the scholarship. So I don't think that an athlete who comes from an impoverished background should just be handed a scholarship in and of itself, because that obviously doesn't feed him. So that should be taken care of. The basic needs of the athlete with the scholarship, I believe, is sufficient pay. I do believe and agree with this legislation in theory, and not necessarily, I don't know how it's going to play out. It's going to be a messy situation, but I do believe that any American, we live in a capitalistic society, and I am full-blooded American and back it in every such way, that we should all be able to capitalize on our skills, our fame, whatever it is, and that student athletes should be able to profit from their likeness, from autographs and such. Yes.
Can I, real quick, before we get to Logan, I'm sorry, I'm going to disagree with you on one thing. Players should get paid. Now, they should not get paid like an NFL player, should not get paid like an NBA player, like a Major League Baseball player. But, for example, and Logan is a college student now, I'm a college graduate, you're a college graduate, Mark. We all
You assume.
We are. I would hope so. I mean, you did. You did
Okay.
go to State.
And I'm hoping to be.
I know you will be. You passed your test. Congratulations. You got your drones down. We all were able to work part-time jobs to help pay for college and to help go through stuff. Yes. And I had what we had here in Florida, Bright Future Scholarship, and so I had college paid for, but I was able to work jobs. I worked 3 jobs in college to help pay for whatever I needed, for books, for food, for whatnot. These athletes should be able to get, here's what I would say here in the state of Florida, and Willie Taggart has come out in support of this, and I am very proud that he is our coach, that he has been able to come out and support this. You pay the players minimum wage. You pay the players minimum wage, that it enables them to get about $10,000 a year. If they just work, you pay them 20 hours, you pay them for their time of practice, time of game. In the state of Florida, let's say it's $15 an hour. That way you have that additional spending cash. And trust me, and especially in the city like Tallahassee, where things are a little bit cheaper as opposed to down here in South Florida with me, things are a little bit more expensive. But if you're in a city like Tallahassee, $10,000 can go a long way towards paying your bills, towards paying. Remember, athletes don't get paid for food. They don't get paid. They don't get money so they can afford food on the weekends. Stuff like that. Things like that help out, and every little cent counts there. And plus, also, this is maybe the raging liberal in me, is that it will increase the minimum wage in states like Alabama, like Mississippi, like Georgia, to help compete with states like Florida, like New York, and like California.
Semantics, Jason. We're both arriving at the same result. We're basically taking care of the basic needs of the student athlete.
But you said something different from me, so I was right, you're wrong. Logan, Florida State 31, North Carolina State 13. What are your thoughts?
I think that should be the discussion at the end. We can add. I'll even add in my young self's opinion too, if there's much I can give.
There we go.
Football wise, that was a pretty interesting game. Of course, the big highlight is the defense. That seems, it's time to actually put in and say Jim Leavitt is making a big impact for Florida State. Harlan Barnett is still your defensive coordinator, but it seems like Jim Leavitt, and when he first came in, they were already moving guys around and where they thought was better, and that's working so far. We've seen Dontavius Jackson lose some depth a little bit, but then again on Saturday he played well. Leonard Warner works better on the inside. Amari Gaynor came in and stepped up and took care of Jaden Lars Woodby's role. He's a redshirt freshman coming in. Physical guy, still growing too, but he had a phenomenal game, 2 sacks, and of course that strip fumble at the end wasn't going to allow them to score. This defense played pretty nasty, and that's what I think is a big deal for Florida State as a whole. I think this team gets a lot of momentum going. It kind of gets the crowd fired up. It gets the sideline fighting to want to play more, to get out there and cause big plays like that. This Florida State defense is known for having big hits, annihilating the quarterback, obliterating guys in midfield, and that just helps the team overall. And that's something I think this team was lacking a little bit. Also, I don't think they're hurting themselves with stupid penalties as much as they used to, which is obviously helping their momentum go a little bit farther than usual. That's one thing that I've learned. Also, guys that have had to sit out a game, Levante Taylor has had a pretty nice last couple of weeks. That's something to give credit to Willie Taggart and whatever he's doing on the back end, behind the scenes. It seems to be working because these guys are playing better with DJ Matthews is still out there and making plays. So Levante Taylor is having a pretty decent last couple of weeks. I'm trying to note on a few other players. The quarterback situation, I'm sure we'll get into, but Hornibrook played well. I mean, stats wise, but he did put himself in some bad scenarios with running right into sacks. I saw that in the first game. He just doesn't know how to really get away from the pressure at times, and it kind of puts him into where, what was it, 8 sacks. At least half of those were on him. Of course, offensive line probably didn't play their best game either, but having that mix of Hornibrook and them didn't work out so well. But yeah, moving forward, I don't think Hornibrook solidified himself as a starter whatsoever. And a lot of people are wanting to say, well, he's won the last 2 games. But I think once we get into the talk about that, I think Blackman will stretch out that offense a lot more than Hornibrook can. And it was pretty evident that NC State kind of knew what to do right off the bat, going straight after Hornibrook and bringing guys down and not allowing Cam Akers to rush any. They weren't worried about Alex Hornibrook's deep threat. So, a good game. And now you get guys back healthy with Juwan Williams, which is a shock to everybody that's covering that Florida State. You would never thought, man, John Williams is going to cause a big impact for that offensive line, but that's the case. And you get back James Blackman. I saw him running after the game back to the end of the tunnel. He seems to be, close to 100%. And so we'll see what they have to bring to Clemson. They still get a lot of time, which I think is great, and learn what's not working. But right now, defense is improving week by week, and I think fans should be pretty happy about that. There's progress happening. There's not a decline. There's progress, and there's been some big impacts on the SP poll. The defense has moved. SP Plus poll, the defense has moved up 20 spots, and that's a big key. That's a big time impact. And now we'll talk about it too. But I think that Jim Leavitt and Harlan Barnett and Willie Taggart conversation is going to be pretty interesting moving into next season too, because obviously Leavitt is playing a big impact, and he's very smart-minded with the defense.
And that's exactly what I was going to say. Jim Leavitt is that defensive coordinator right now, and you cannot hide the fact that since he's come in, that defense from the first 2 games against Boise State and the 1-point victory over Louisiana Monroe, you cannot argue that defense has not played lights out different, much better since Jim Leavitt has come in over the last 3 games. Yes, they lost to Virginia, but even then, the defense played much better than they did in the first 2 games. So I think that's the biggest key so far, has been you've got another set of eyes that has been in this game for, we're talking about 30-plus seasons, getting the job done. So I think he will be the defensive coordinator next year. Sorry, Harlan Burnett, but I think we'll see Jim Leavitt.
Yeah. And note the other interesting thing, Jason, is that possibly definitely in the top 5, but one of your top defensive players are out for the season. You got your top defensive end, Joshua Kane-Doe, is out for the season. He's not on the field. And then you also have Jaden Lawrence-Woodby, who is not on the field and won't be there for the rest of the season. This defense is stepping up. There's younger guys coming in, guys that haven't had a lot of playing time in their past are getting up there, and they're causing some havoc. I think Janarius Robinson has came in and has looked pretty nice, trying to fill in that void that Joshua Kane is not there with. And it's going to be interesting to see, the hit that was stupid. See, I've played football. I've played against Gainer. It's football. It's so stupid. And I get tired of seeing some people, the crown of the helmet, but let's be real. He's 6'5". What do you want a 6'5", 255-pound defensive end to do? And Hornibrook looked like he was crouching anyways. I don't know. Do you want him to go to his legs and tear his ACLs, both of them? And what else do you want him to do? It's just kind of ridiculous. But then again, I was at the game and I saw where they almost threw out Hamson Nasruddin, who is one of their best defenders, top tackler of the season so far. They almost threw him out, but I didn't get to see the film on it. But some people are saying that they didn't call it on Hamza because they kind of screwed up the Janarius Robinson call, but I might be wrong.
Well, that's the thing. We'll toss this back to Mark in 1 second, but I think that I understand the call. I even understand him being kicked out of the game. I do get that. I do understand. I support the move for safety in college football. What I don't support is the ACC going back, getting the opportunity. They had the opportunity to go back, look at the replay, and take away his suspension for the first half of the Clemson game, and they still didn't, even after you clearly look at the video, look at it in slow motion, look at it in real time. It was not a helmet-to-helmet hit. So that is what bothers me, and that goes back to my continuing beef with being a member of a joke football conference in the ACC. But that's something that we will talk about next week as we prepare for the Clemson game. But and let's just say one thing, and final thing here. None of us are saying that Florida State is going to beat Clemson. We'll do our previews right now. Clemson is going to beat Florida State. Would that game be a lot closer if the game was this week? I think so. I think Florida State would be competitive if that's the team that comes out against Clemson, and Clemson's coming off a 1-point victory last week against North Carolina. So none of us are sitting there getting our hopes up for a 10-2 season, for making a New Year's Six bowl game at this point. What this gives us hope of is that instead of, we're 2-2 after another fourth quarter comeback against Louisville, and can this team win 6 games? Can this team go to a bowl game? Now, all of a sudden, an 8-9 win regular season, and maybe sliding into an Orange Bowl like in 2016, all of this stuff becomes realistic. All this stuff becomes possible, because even if with a loss at Clemson, you're 3-3 with a much easier second half than you faced last year.
That word hope you just brought up, Jason, did not exist a few weeks ago.
Nope.
That hope has gotten stronger and stronger and stronger. And again, we do not expect Florida State to compete with Clemson. But if you go with the transitive property, which I have some faith in, I don't believe it completely works across the board. If you take North Carolina, if you take Florida State, they seem to be pretty comparable teams. And of course, we saw what North Carolina was almost able to do against Clemson, come within a 2-point conversion of pulling off a major impossibility, we all thought. Kyle Pickett uncovers a truth every week. This is what this guy's mission and purpose in life is. And he is displayed to the world and let everyone know that I am a genius.
Is he your cousin, uncle, nephew? What is the relationship?
Kyle
Family.
Okay. Family member? Okay. Cool.
Just one of the throngs. One of the throngs out there. One of the many.
That's the first time we've used throngs in 19 weeks. That's the first time the word throngs has been used.
I felt it applied there.
That thron.
Once we get to 14,000, I think that we hit 14,000 yesterday. So we got to throngs. I believe we could now justify the usage of that word. All right. So we talk Florida State football each and every Wednesday night. So make that connection. Wednesday night, 7 o'clock. What do I do? Oh, yeah, Florida State football. I got to listen. Yeah, I got to hear from Logan. I got to hear from Jason. And, oh, yeah, that guy that keeps him in line, that basically keeps him on the rails, doesn't let him get too high and too off into la-la land, especially Jason, pulls him back down to earth, gets him back to where they should be. Yeah, that guy. That guy, Jason. Logan, I'm sorry that I put you in the same category there. Just briefly.
Real quick, just because we talk about our corporate sponsorship here, I want to give a shout out real quick to Spirit. It's where we went to go eat before the game. We went to Hooters the night before in Tallahassee. A quick shout out to all the places I eat in Tallahassee. Mazel tov to all of you. So thanks for feeding the beast. I appreciate it this weekend. Yes, I will do it like that. That's how I roll, Logan.
None of us are getting paid for this, Jason.
We never got paid. Are you getting paid? Are you getting paid?
I will tell you next Wednesday, we will be finishing up here as Yom Kippur comes to an end. It's the Jewish Day of Atonement. It's a big holiday in my people's religion. It's the biggest one. So I will actually be eating on set. So if you want to, shout out me on Twitter at JP Chop Chat. What should I eat? Because we've eaten pizza before on here. We've eaten Popeyes before. What should I eat to break the fast next Wednesday, to break Yom Kippur fast?
The super chat here allows you to contribute to the channel. You can do that in so many ways. Hit the like button, comment, share the videos, and of course, subscribe here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Join Jason at Chop Chat and Logan over at NoleGameday.com as well. Let's get to these comments. And while I'm scanning the comments, Jason, I want to hear from you first. What impressed you the most about this win? And then I want you two to mix it up regarding the quarterback situation, because we've got a positive when it comes to the quarterback situation. Both guys are capable. Hornibrook coming off a nice little nifty 316-yard performance, 3 touchdowns, no picks, and 40 pass attempts with 29 completions. He did stand back there like a statue at times, as Logan outlined, but a nice effort from him the last 2 weeks. And we've got 2 legitimate quarterbacks in play. But otherwise, Jason, what impressed you the most and gives you hope going forward?
What impressed me the most, and you talked about right there, was how Hornibrook played starting his first game for the Seminoles. There was the question, because he did have a solid fourth quarter against Louisville. So the question was, how would he do in his first start? This is a much different offense than what he ran when he was the starter at Wisconsin. With that being said, I like the way he came in. I like the way how he didn't try to do too much. He came in, did what he was capable of, and got the job done with over 300 yards. Beautiful touchdown pass to Ontario Wilson right before the half. That was phenomenal. 2 touchdown passes to Marion Terry. So I like that. I'm going to also give you a negative. The negative is that I thought the offensive line did take a step back. I know that it's dealt with injuries, it's dealt with changes, and it's still trying to find itself and find that offensive line from 2013, 2014. It went back a step this week, and that is a step back that it cannot take against Clemson. If it plays like that against Clemson, Clemson is going to destroy Florida State. Not as bad as last year, but Clemson will win very easily. So I will give that. Now, we talked about this before, and Logan and I can talk about this here. The question is, do you start James Blackman against Clemson? You know, from an MCL sprain, he should be in that timetable where he should be healthy, and then he should be fine to play against Clemson. Or do you go with someone who is the hot hand in Alex Hornibrook? To me personally, I stick with James Blackman, and I know, and I've had critics on social media today who've said, no, Alex Hornibrook looked great. Alex Hornibrook looked phenomenal, and I praise him for that. To me, FSU is in a great spot right now because you have 2 quarterbacks who are solid starters, both who can start a game if need be. To me, and I've been critical of James Blackman after the Boise State game, after the Louisiana Monroe game, and to a certain extent after the Virginia game, of him playing himself. Is he playing himself out of the starting spot? To me, he has not yet, and that, I think, you owe him. For this Clemson game, he is the starter. He did not play because of injury. It wasn't because of bad play against Louisville. It's because he was hurt. He could not play in this game. So I think you have to start James Blackman. He has not played himself out of that starting spot, and thus he should start against Clemson.
Mm-hmm. And I agree on that. The thing that I think, you already noted on how, he's letting himself get sacked, and the offensive line played not its best performance at all this year, so that also didn't help. But one thing, who's Florida State's best player of the season? It'd have to be, of course, offensively, Cam Akers, since we're talking about the offensive side of the ball. And in order for Cam Akers to have a good game, they're going to have to stretch the field a little bit. With Blackman, when he comes in, that already starts giving a threat to Clemson and their defensive backs and their linebackers. They're going to have to cover with the NC State, and what they did very well, which I noticed early on in the game, the first half, really, Florida State had no offensive running game, 0 yards. And that played a big role in how the offense was playing. But of course, with NC State, they brought all their guys down. They made sure to take care of Hornibrook and stuff the run. You got to start stretching the field. You got to make sure that defense gets spread around back there, and that's what Blackman brings to the table. I don't think he's lost his job. If Alex Hornibrook looked phenomenal against NC State and looked just unreal, then give him the job. And if he did have a nice ball to Ontario Wilson, but it's still Blackman's job right now. He's the starting quarterback going. He's your biggest leader. You got to have that kind of leadership. The guy that's been there the longest, definitely when you're going to Death Valley, which could possibly be a 7:30 primetime matchup on ABC, you got to have a guy in there like that to kind of loosen up that locker room too. We saw it in 2013. You had a young Jameis Winston in there and other guys helping loosen up that locker room. James Blackman is your number one guy to do that. He was doing it before the Alabama game, before he was even going to expected to play a snap. against Alabama in 2017. So, I think James Blackman is your starter. The thing is, though, you can kind of mess around with two quarterbacks if you want. That's something that Kendall Briles can utilize, and Taggart. It's not hurting anybody. Just having Blackman in there, I think, helps this game at Clemson more than anything. Got to stretch that field. You got to get Dalvin Cook. Got to get Cam Akers going, because that's what is going to be. That's your best weapon right now. And in order for him to be utilized the best, you got to start stretching the field a little bit, so then you can get some running game going. If not, Clemson will about just destroy you. In the front, linebackers will pull down. It won't last long. So, stretch that defense as much as you can. I think James Blackman is most definitely the guy to do that.
And I'm going to actually apologize for something I've said in the preseason, where I was very critical of Cam Akers and said that, last season, yes, the offensive line was atrocious, horrible, god awful. And I said that it was Cam Akers' responsibility, because all we heard when he came in the 2017 recruiting class was how this is one of the best players, and how I think he took a step back. And as much as you want to blame the offensive line, he had to take a decent amount of the blame for only having, I believe it was 708 yards last season. I'm just going to look real quick. Yeah, he had 706 yards last season. So far this season, one look at the stats, the man has 582 yards through 5 games. He's averaging 5 yards a carry, has 3 games where he's averaged over 5 yards a carry, and another game over 4 yards a carry. That's 3 carries, and that's a first down right there. So I'm going to give Cam Akers credit. Cam, thank you for proving what I said, that you need to step up, and you have. You have 582 yards through 5 games. That's averaging over 100 yards a game. That, to me, is going to be what carries FSU through the rest of the season. If you can have Cam Akers getting, he had a little over 80 yards against NC State. If he can do 80 yards a game the rest of the season, to go with either Blackman having decent games or Hornibrook coming in and having decent games, whoever's quarterback, this team has the potential to be dangerous. This team has the potential to keep Clemson on guard, to keep Florida on guard at the end of the season, and potentially pull off a win or two that you may not see coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another thing, noting back to Blackman, that's a difference than Hornibrook, because I know there's still people pulling for Hornibrook, and that's I can definitely understand that. He's won the last 2 games, and they have a good momentum going. But this defense really was the strong part this last Saturday. Hornibrook isn't that elusive with getting away from pressure. He's like a magnet to it. If you go back and watch film a little bit, he kind of puts himself in the tough scenario, and he puts himself right there to get sacked easily. James Blackman, which you're going to want to have against Clemson's defensive line, just them alone, you're going to want to have a guy that can pull up, move around, roll out a little bit better. Most definitely in that kind of environment, you're going to want to have him there a little bit, that can get away from the pressure and get those throws that you might not see that Hornibrook can get, where James Blackman likes going deep. And that's where I think it's time, and we'll get to it, I'm sure, for Florida State's wide receivers to have a pretty decent game. I think one-on-one scenarios, you got Terry right there. Of course, Terry Wilson is having a pretty nice season so far, but using these wide receivers and James Blackman, I think, is your best bet for that, to get the offense going, both rushing-wise, more your best player there, but then, of course, Tamarion Terry. And
2 quick things. Number one, in the 2013 season, people were screaming for Sean McGuire to come in at times, and you had Jameis Winston playing one of the best seasons for any college football quarterback. And people, it's the backup factor. People love the backup. The backup can do no wrong. People love James Blackman last year versus Francois. And also, can we go back to Cheryl's quote for a second? I think Cheryl just hit on Mark. I'm not sure. That's fine. Mark looks tired. He needs a good back rub.
No. Cheryl's a kind soul, and she supports the channel. She supports all the live streams, even though, as you see in the avatar, she's a Buckeyes fan. She supports everything we do. Cheryl is amazing.
And that's fine. Cheryl, congratulations. Thank you, Cheryl, for supporting Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. I'm just saying, I'm not going to give you the back rub. Logan's not going to give you the back rub. I'm saying, if Cheryl's throwing it out there, Mark, I'm just saying, This is your time, buddy. This is your time.
Yeah, I have no one here available
You are-
at the moment. What I was going to say
Whoa. At the moment. There we go,
at
Cheryl.
the moment, actually, so Jason, let's get back to football. We don't need to digress here. I know that I did select to put the comment on the screen, but I fell into your little trap there.
Yeah, Jason's always there.
I knew it.
Always there.
All right. Yes, sir.
So you started out that previous comment by saying that you had apologized. You were about to apologize for something that you said in the off season.
We're doubting
I can think of a lot. I can think of a list of things that you should be apologizing for. One would be that Mac Brown is how good? Did we all see the effort out of those heels on Saturday?
So I'm sorry, I missed all the college football changes. Is there now a rule for wins, losses, and close losses, or is a loss? Just like a win is a win. Mac Brown, shout out Florida State alumni. We'll give him a shout out for that. We'll give him a shout out for winning a national title at Texas, almost winning another one. I still believe if Colt McCoy plays, I believe they beat Alabama in 2009 if he didn't get hurt. But no, he made a stupid call. And I've said it. He made a stupid call. The argument, our defense is getting tired. You have a chance to beat the number one team in the country, to beat Clemson, to completely put an end to any chance of the ACC being in the college football playoff, because no team would even top that. And Clemson with a loss, I don't think they make it back because I don't think they have the schedule to get to that point. You have a chance to do all this stuff, and then you're going to blow it. I'm sorry. No, Mac Brown does not get credit for that game. Mac Brown gets credit for comeback wins against South Carolina. Mac Brown gets comeback wins for Miami. You lose 3 straight games.
Mac Brown gets no credit for playing the defending national champion who is working on a 20-some game winning streak and playing them within 1 point. No. I understand it doesn't count as a win. We go beyond that, Jason. It's not all just about the wins and losses. Sure, in the standings it is, but we're evaluating performance. We're evaluating performance both as the players and as the coaches. So don't tell me that there's not a difference between Mac Brown going out there with his team losing 50-0 to Clemson versus preparing them to take the national champions to a 2-point conversion in the final minute. That's a completely different coaching performance.
It is 100% the same thing. A loss is a loss. He had the chance. He kicks that extra point. They go to overtime. I know that you're a fan of the moment. We know who you work for. We know where you live. I know what network you work for. I'm not going to call them out here, but we know that you're one of those who lives in the moment. That's fine. That's what a lot of sports people are doing. I'm living in the fact that Mac Brown blew an opportunity and should not get credit for that. He should get credit for playing a great ball game, but he made a boneheaded coaching decision. I heard the arguments why it was made. I disagree completely with it. It was a boneheaded move, and he should not get credit for that. A loss is a loss. A close loss, 1-point loss, 50-point loss. A loss is a loss.
Let's call the North Carolina team, and we'll get back to Florida State after I make this statement. Okay. Let's call the coaching job that Mac Brown is doing for what it is. Did I agree with the decision to go for 2? No, I did not. I thought it was not the call to make. Now, it could have succeeded, and he would have gotten all sorts of accolades and pats on the back. I don't necessarily disagree with that kind of logic that they're the better team. They've got more depth. We have our shot. Let's take it right now because we don't feel as though we play 50-50 with this team the rest of regulation. Plus, Trevor Lawrence with a minute left to play, only needing a field goal. So there is reason and logic. It wasn't a total blunder like Pat Fitzgerald with Northwestern this past week, but that's a whole other story, going for 2 down. 9 points. Anyway, and making some really boneheaded moves. And I think Pat Fitzgerald is tremendous. But back to Mac Brown, the difference in this North Carolina football team this year versus the past 2 seasons, it is remarkable.
Agreed. I will 100% agree with that. Mac Brown should be praised for both winning the first 2 games, the comeback winning against South Carolina, comeback winning against Miami. I'll even give him praise for playing well against Wake Forest losing that first game against Wake Forest
They
because
played better Saturday than they played losing by 6 points to Wake Forest.
North Carolina has looked better. Just like I will say, Louisville, that Louisville team that FSU beat last week is a hell of a lot better than the Louisville team that played last season. So give Scott Satterfield credit for that. You said you were talking about Mac Brown getting praise for the way they played against Clemson. I will not give him praise because of a boneheaded call at the end. I will give them praise for him being a better team. I think North Carolina will be a much better team this year than they were in 2018, but he does not get credit for that. 1 point loss against Clemson. Congratulations, you still lost. No credit.
That's nuts. That's crazy.
That's
crazy talk.
I never said
you're telling me that if in 2 weeks from tonight we're sitting here after Florida State just lost by 1 point to Clemson, you're not going to have anything positive to say about the coaching in that game that took Florida State to the brink of pulling off a major upset.
Well, I've already told you before that Willie Taggart's the best coach in the ACC. I mean, we already know that fact. That's a given right there. So, I mean, there wouldn't be any more praise that I could heap upon the man who will lead Florida State to championship after championship after championship. But that being said, no, I will. It all depends on how Florida State plays. What I want to see in 2 weeks, and we'll talk about this next week more, and we'll talk about it for the next 20 minutes or so here. What I want to see out of Florida State is a better performance. I want to see the Florida State team that played in 2015, where the game was tied in the fourth quarter until Clemson scored 10 points. I want to see the Florida State team who played in the 2017 game with James Blackman at quarterback, and they were only down 3 with 5 minutes to go, and they had the ball within range, you could say, of a long field goal attempt, and they were driving down the field before a turnover. I want to see competitiveness out of the game. Once again, I will give Florida State credit for playing. If they can play a solid game, lose by 7 points, 10 points at the most, I'll give them credit. But I'm not going to give them credit for a loss. A loss is a loss, Mark. I'm
not trying to credit them with a win that they didn't earn. I'm not trying to say they won 20-21. I'm not trying to credit them with a win. You just completely contradicted yourself by saying you're going to give Florida State credit for staying within a touchdown of Clemson, but you won't give North Carolina the same credit. And Florida State should be able to play a much better ball game based on talent on the roster than North Carolina.
Is this MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football?
It is MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. And before we hand this over to Logan for a little bit of logic and wisdom to finally get us back on the rails, folks out there, I want to extend an invitation. In future weeks, we don't want Logan carrying this entire show. We're looking for a second analyst.
Okay, got it.
So we need a second analyst on here to evaluate Florida State in the ACC. Somewhat accurately.
Logan, before we get to you, no, I'm saying Florida State, if they lose to Clemson, which I've already said, Florida State will lose to Clemson. No, a loss is a loss. I will say, hey, Florida State, you played a great ball game. I will give them credit as far as playing a great ball game. But your argument was sitting here wanting me to heap praise on Mac Brown for a loss to Clemson. No,
I do.
I'm not heaping praise on somebody who loses, just like I will not heap praise on Willie Taggart if they lose to Clemson. I will say, hey, great job, guys, but you still lost. You're 3-3. Now let's step it up over the second half of the season. What are the potential scenarios if FSU beats Clemson? Trevor Lawrence gets declared ineligible. Dabo Swinney decides to leave and take the job as a Alabama special assistant to take over for Nick Saban. I'm trying to think what other crazy things would happen for Florida State to beat Clemson. Asteroid strikes Clemson, and Clemson has to forfeit the game. Those are the ways that Florida State beats Clemson. And I'm saying this as a proud FSU alumni. Florida State is not going to beat Clemson.
I'm going to make one final statement and have you respond to this statement, Jason. Chris Ash was just fired at Rutgers. Rutgers probably is the worst Power 5 program in college football right now. They have been deplorable, routed by 50 or 60 points over and over and over throughout the Big Ten over the past 3 seasons.
Go for it.
If any coach takes over this program, wins the Big Ten Eastern Division, goes to the Big Ten championship game, loses, let's say, to Wisconsin by 1 point, you will give them no credit for that effort. They didn't get the job done. They lost the Big Ten championship by 1 point. They didn't beat the best team in the Big Ten.
I played football.
It's all or nothing.
I played football my entire life, played all through high school, son of a former Florida State player who coached football and whatnot at the high school level. And you could say, oh, well, let's look at this. Let's look at how they played and whatnot. The bottom line is It is about wins and losses. And I've said this before. Florida State, it's not an ugly win against Louisiana Monroe. It's a win. Florida State was not an ugly loss against, or a close loss against Virginia. It was a loss. A win is a win. A loss is a loss. Mac Brown, shout out FSU, class of 74. He lost.
No one is discounting that we alter the standings. Yes, that was a win for Clemson over North Carolina. That was a win for Florida State over Louisiana Monroe. But we are here to analyze the sport, analyze the games, evaluate the performance.
I'm still waiting on my paychecks from you for all those specials I did in the preseason. That's all I'm throwing out there.
As soon as we get the
Logan, save Mark. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, needs you to save him. He's just talking. Now he needs your help to side with him, so that's 2-on-1 against the real voice of college football, Jason Parker from ShopChat.com.
I was going to bring up the thing about Rutgers and their situation now, like their top 3 candidates. They haven't hired. Well, of course not, but top 3 candidates, and Jim Leavitt is also in there. So that's why I was talking about earlier on here about that. Taggart's got to kind of pull Leavitt behind and say, hey, don't take that job right now, please. We're going to pay you next year. We're going to promote you to defensive coordinator, or maybe he could be picked as a Leavitt would be. They had Schiano and Butch Jones up there. So Leavitt would probably be the cheapest out of all 3 of those. And that's going to be interesting to see. But Taggart's got to be able to see. The thing, though, the advantage that Taggart has is that he and Leavitt are close friends. So that might help the situation. I think Leavitt is liking what's the environment of Florida State. I think he likes the passion that it comes with it. The fan base is, hungry for wins, and I think he likes the challenge. He's an older guy, and maybe he likes having this he likes growing things into better situations, and I think he does stay at Florida State if Taggart's able to pull him aside and everything. But that's something to keep an eye on, honestly, because going into the Clemson game, who do you think needs to have the best game, or need to have their best game ever in order for Florida State to beat Clemson? Of course, you got the quarterback situation, but if we're taking quarterback's quarterback, but offensively, defensively, I think it's time for, we already know what Cam Akers is. And if Blackman's in there, I do feel like Florida State can run the ball a little bit, but I think this is Marvin Wilson's time to show out and be a household name. I think this is a dog that is a top, in my opinion, he's top 5 NFL draft kind of dude. He's already was an NFL size in high school. He's absolutely destroying kids. They're having to put 2 guys on him. He's bullying them. He's pushing guys back 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage. I think this is where he's got to show out big time, and they've got to get to Lawrence, and that's got to be a big thing immediately to start the game. Got to throw blitz packages at him, but Marvin Wilson has got to be the guy. This is where he's got to show out. He'll be fully rested. Marvin Wilson, you got a fully rested also with Cam Akers. But big boys need their rest, and he's going to have his rest, and this could be a big game for him and going after Trevor Lawrence and the running game.
What is showing out to you? Because to me, I think well, I hear. I mean, do you think he needs multiple sacks? What would you say if the dream stat line for Marvin Wilson after the Clemson game is what?
4 sacks.
Okay.
4 sacks. I think that's all.
Okay. Have you been drinking? Did you drink some more of that natural light that's up there, or what? Because I got water if you need something to sober up real quick. He's not going to get 4 sacks. In a perfect world, God bless, I hope he does. He's not going to get 4 sacks against Clemson. Sorry.
That would be the absolute big time showing out. Logically, I think all he really needs to do is cause a lot of havoc on the inside and let Durden, who's had a solid season so far, come in and maybe take a little bit of the pieces of the cake from Trevor Lawrence or whatever they're trying to do to pressure him. But they got to also be smart too. I hope Barnett is trying to cook up some stuff with Leavitt about what they ran with Boise State, because that has got to be what's ran against Trevor Lawrence. I don't care if he's in his second season and he's the next whatever the hell he is, got to throw blitzes at him no matter what, or it's going to be a problem.
And to touch on what you said about Levitt real quick, I'm just going to throw it out there. People tend to forget Jim Levitt, both from his time where he was a longtime coach at USF down in the Tampa area. He's from the state of Florida. He's from the Tampa Bay area. I believe he's from Pinellas County, St. Petersburg area. So he's 4 hours from his home. He's in a state that he knows. He's in a state that he's recruited more than a lot of other assistants. He recruited a lot of guys out to Oregon. His time at Colorado and whatnot, he was big on recruiting the state of Florida and whatnot. He's happy to be home. He's happy to be home. He's happy to be at a relevant school. Sorry, it's not FIU, it's not FAU. It's at one of the top three, the big three schools in the state of Florida. In his home state, he's 4 hours from his mother. She's in her 90s, and he had talked about that's why he stayed out of coaching this year. Florida State was able to convince him with either a decent paycheck or the promise of being defensive coordinator. Next year, we'll find out what happens there. So I think that's what you're seeing when you talk about seeing a refreshed Jim Levitt. And I believe this is the most that a defensive analyst has been talking about in a while.
Yeah, so essentially has his and we see similar positions like this, especially in Alabama, where they've got like 48 assistants, and we'll get to the Ricky Aguayo comment, or what are their however they've spelled his name.
Done with Chiller Boy. Done with him. Bye,
Ricky. U's and Y's there. Just in regards to Jim Levitt's role with the team, we hear the term analyst, but what do we think he actually has done? Because his pedigree, as Jason has outlined, both at USF and his connection there, but since then, going to Colorado, for example, and helping to raise a program that has been in the ashes for 15 years before him, and then immediately after his departure, and lifting them to a Pac-12 championship game and one of the best defensive efforts in the conference that year. Then he goes to Oregon, and they instantly jump like 40 metric points in the S&P plus. So what do we think that he has accomplished in such a short time there at FSU?
Aggressiveness. And you look at the first games, the Boise State game, the Louisiana Monroe game, when they were blitzing, when they were bringing guys in and trying to actually, like, I'm trying to say this without being sarcastic, play college football, have football how it's supposed to be played, and bringing pressure, they're able to accomplish it. Florida State's athletes, when you just look at athletic ability, athletes against athletes compete with almost everyone on their schedule, maybe with the exception of Clemson, and I think it's probably a push with Florida. But you say the other 10 opponents, Florida State has better athletes just scanning down the roster. When you bring that pressure, when you bring Marvin Wilson, when you bring when he was healthy, Jaden Lars-Woodby, when you bring all these guys in, you're able to get stuff done. He has brought back, and you look at his time at USF, his time at Oregon, his time at Colorado, it is that aggressive style. And I think he's brought that extra set of eyes and a more aggressive set of eyes, as opposed to a Harlan Barnett, who tends to be more of a finesse defensive coordinator. And I hate to use the comparison because I don't like to compare teams from different eras and teams from whatnot. To me, Jim Levitt is the closest thing FSU football has had to Mickey Andrews. And Mickey Andrews spent 26 seasons coaching that defense and was arguably the greatest coordinator, at least in the last 50 years of college football, with what he did for those defenses for FSU. I think if Jim Levitt can get the keys to the defense in the 2020 season and beyond, I think it will be very interesting to see how far he can take it.
Jason, Christian here, Christian Andino, he knows. I bet if it was FSU making the game this close, like UNC, the dude in the middle, he'd be praising Willie like if he was God.
I'm the dude in the middle. That's me. How's it going? Dude in the middle. Chat.com. I would say, and once again, I gave Mack Brown credit for having a great effort and for being a much better coach for North Carolina than anything North Carolina had last year. And once again, I'm going to give all the listeners at home a second. Everyone listen. Everyone's got it? Okay. The disagreement was MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, wanted Mack Brown to be praised for the Clemson game. I am not going to praise somebody for a loss. If Willie Taggart loses by 1 point, by 50 points to Clemson, I will not praise him and say he deserves a 4-year contract extension because they lost to the defending national champions, whether it's by 1 point, 7 points, whatever. A loss is a loss, a win is a win. I know that MarkRogersTV is not arguing that, but that's where this whole thing came from. So everyone calm down. MarkRogersTV and I love each other. Jason is delusional. He is. What has Jason been smoking? I stopped smoking in college. I've never smoked weed in my life. I stopped smoking cigarettes because in college because I realized I couldn't afford them.
There you go.
I was like, why am I working 3 jobs and smoking? And I was able to quit one of those jobs. So shout out to Publix in Tallahassee.
I want to note something on Levitt too, which I found pretty interesting, which Taggart talked about, and also players are talking about in interviews, is that he's bringing a ton of energy to practices. And I'm wondering what, I thought we were hearing good things about the energy being there and whatnot, but it seemed like stuff was actually being very stale at practices, and something that the players have said, even Durden, maybe Gaynor said it too, but Levitt has brought a lot of energy to this team, which it might have needed. Maybe it was getting really stale at practices, which it kind of sucks because it was still early on in the season. And him coming in, bringing that kind of energy. And like you said, Jason, with Mickey Andrews, there was a lot of energy. I mean, it was a nasty defense that he built and it was set upon. This is what Florida State's defense should be 24/7. This sets the tone for every single game. Look at the 2013 team and look at the years behind whenever I couldn't even see him. I was too young. But just watching film on that. But the 2013 team that I went to almost every game to see, it was just violence. I mean, it was violence every single play. And of course, now a majority of them are in the league. Most of them even starting. But it was just, I don't know, just angry defense, pissed off, like someone had just said something about their mom, and that's how they played. And that, I think that kind of maybe Levitt and they're kind of giving that defense a wake-up call. And that's what Taggart was trying to do coming in, but it just didn't seem like it was working that way. And I think the younger guys are learning a little bit quicker now too, because you got Jaleel McRae that's getting some more reps, who's going to be a stud there at linebacker position, in my opinion. And Dontavius Jackson had a nice game too. But younger guys coming in are going to come with that nastiness. And I think Taggart is recruiting the right guys. So this could be a good sign for Florida State's defense as a team and as a whole, because it is big. Florida State needs a nasty defense.
Mark, I know you're trying to be the control and being the man behind the curtain here. Can we go back about 3 quotes real quick? I pointed down to it earlier. If you could, please.
Yeah, I'll address that. That's why I put it up there. Although I can't.
Shout out to the man of the day, Marvin Williams there with Irvin Williams. I apologize. I would just like you to address it because I agree with Irvin, but I would like to give you the opportunity to address.
There's nothing to agree with there. So I cannot go back. I can only go back about 10 comments. So I cannot bring that back on the screen. So basically what was stated was, if Florida State gets within 1 point of Clemson, Mark is not going to give Willie Taggart any credit. There is absolutely no evidence of anything that I've stated in the past about Willie Taggart or other coaches across the country, with my approach to college football analysis being completely neutral, that I would not give Willie Taggart credit that he did a nice coaching job preparing that team to play within 1 point of maybe the best team in the country, certainly one of the top 5 teams in the country. I certainly would give credit to Florida State. If they go to Clemson and play within 1 point, depending on how the game goes. Now, I may lean that Clemson didn't play well, but I would still give a lot of credit to Florida State for playing a game to that magnitude within 1 point of Clemson. Yes, I would. And I don't know, and there's no evidence of me not giving credit where credit is due for good performances, both as a coach and a player. So that I have been tough on Willie Taggart. This is not historically. I have ranked Willie Taggart fairly high among ACC coaches going into his inaugural season. And then prior to that, as a, let's say, roughly top 30 coach in the nation, in his group of 5 stops, Western Kentucky, UCF, and then his 1 stop at Oregon. He did a horrible job last season. That doesn't make him a horrible coach for his entire coaching record or tenure, but I will not take any argument from anyone that belies that he did not do a horrible job last season.
It was
not all of his fault. He inherited a situation, but he did a horrible job managing that football team and game preparation week to week.
I don't necessarily disagree with you that he did a bad job. I think the word horrible is way too much considering how much of a dumpster fire that was left. But we're going to end on this note. We have 3 minutes left here. I want it documented. October 2nd, 2019, if Florida State gets within, let's say, 3 points. 3 points of Clemson. Let's say Clemson wins.
It doesn't have to be 3 points. Florida State could stay within 2 touchdowns of Clemson. They could play a really solid game, lose 35-21, and I would come on here and say Florida State looked good. They played their best game of the season. They're playing maybe the next national champion, and they played fine, and it was a 28-21 game with 5 minutes left, and then Clemson iced the game with a final touchdown, and they played really well.
As I was saying,
it doesn't have to be a field goal game.
As I was saying before I was interrupted, if Florida State loses by 3 points or less, you, on the show afterwards, will have to wear a Do Something t-shirt. I will order it from the Florida State bookstore, a picture of either we'll get a picture of Willie Taggart or the hashtag Do Something. You will wear it on the air for the 7 o'clock hour, the Wednesday afterwards, and show your love for the man, the myth, the legend, Willie Taggart. Deal? I'll buy it for you. I will buy the shirt. I will have it Amazoned to you. Next day, you wear it. Let me know your size. I'll get it for you if Florida State gets within 3 points of Clemson.
Okay, before I say no, I will ask the question, what is it in this for me? What happens if Florida State gets blown out? What do I get? I can only lose in this scenario.
I'll give you the back rub. I don't know, whatever. I don't know what you need. What's going on? I don't know what you need. I mean, I'll take you to Five Guys one night for dinner.
You don't understand the proposition of a losing bet. That I can't win anything. I can only lose.
Well,
what kind of issue I would have with this scenario?
You're coming off an awesome win over NC State. You don't know how to lose.
Okay.
Oh man.
Coming from the man who is supporting a coach who is now what, 7-9?
3-2 in 2019.
That only wins and losses matter.
3-2.
Logan, what do you have for us this week on Knoll Game Day?
A lot of probably focus a lot about on NFL while there's time. We'll do a lot of previewing, of course, for Clemson. But Jameis Winston is having a pretty damn solid year so far, except for the first week, of course. But he's playing nice. He's playing very smart. I've liked this. Florida State has a pretty nice quarterback and running back in the league right now. Let's just wait till at least half the season is through. But having a pretty good quarterback out there, slinging that thing, making smart decisions, and by far, in my opinion, I can talk about this for hours to anybody, by far the best running back in the league, Dalvin Cook. I'm so tired of hearing about freaking Ezekiel Elliott, Saquon Barkley. They're okay. We get it. They look beautiful, whatever. They got big thighs, whatever. Dalvin Cook is dirty. Oh no, there's serious. There's ESPN. There's actually ESPN videos of them talking about Saquon Barkley's thighs, and people go and report on his thighs.
He has helped the one-armed bandits to 3 straight wins in fantasy football. So shout out to Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, Dalvin Cook is playing stupid good. Brian Burns is playing good. He's now the ESPN ranked him the number 2 best rookie so far throughout the season. NFL guy, the NFL Knolls are starting to pick that up a little bit. So some coverage there.
I think Mark Rogers is going to go talk Miami football now as they get prepared for that.
I sure do. I am late for Miami football. Logan or Jason, you can give us a rundown there at Chop Chat next week.
There you go.
We get everyone set for Clemson and FSU in Death Valley. All right, gentlemen, we appreciate you stopping by as always and breaking it down for us.
Thanks, bud.
Yes,
thank you. Just a turn of the mouse. Right here, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football with Miami. All right, guys.